Hello, welcome to Fertility Support in the Workplace, brought to you by Zest and the IVF Network. I'm Jennifer Elworthy. I'm a career and fertility coach, so I support women who are struggling to balance their career goals with fertility treatment, which very much comes from my own personal experience and, of course, my coach training. I also sit on the advisory board of the IVF Network, which is an online website full of amazing videos with interviews with the very best leading fertility experts in the country and across the world. I'm joined today by for this webinar by Golnoush and Joy. Could you go introduce yourselves, please, and where you work?
Hi, I'm Joy Waugh. I work for Zest. We are the benefits technology provider. We specialise in employee benefits technology, and my background is in the employee benefits sector. I've had 20 years experience working with companies to look at what benefits they provide and how they communicate those on their benefit platforms.
My name is Golnoush. I'm a molecular biologist and a geneticist. I'm also the CEO and co-founder at ScreenMe. We specifically focus on the reproductive microbiome, the vaginal and the seminal microbiome, which impact both men and women in the reproductive field, but especially when it comes to fertility. I'm passionate about educating the world, really, about the impact of reproductive health on both men and women and their fertility journeys. I'm looking forward to this.
Thank you both for being here. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. I thought it was worth starting with a bit of background about me and my fertility experiences. So I had my first pregnancy and sort of naively thought everything would be fine, and then went on to discover that it was an ectopic pregnancy. I was very seriously ill during that, and my husband was pretty much told to sort of, say goodbye and call my family while I was rushed into emergency surgery to sort of deal with the internal bleeding. And through all that, it was very much forgotten that I had also lost a baby during that process. My focus then was to just get pregnant as fast as possible, and I hadn't really given much thought to my own mental health and well-being, which really, really suffered. My therapist diagnosed me with PTSD. I was having panic attacks and extreme anxiety, all while trying to hold down a pretty senior role in marketing, which was really, really hard for me. My confidence was knocked. I felt like if I couldn't do the basics of having a baby, how could I possibly do a good job at work, present to the board, negotiate more budget or a salary rise, anything like that. I worked with an amazing mentor at the time, and she really helped me to reframe my thinking around work to one of a distraction. And she helped me have the right conversations with my employers about what I was going through and how they could best support me. They were fantastic. And I was very, very lucky, but the issue shouldn't come down to luck. And there was no fertility policy. There were no rights written into the employee handbook. I was just, as I say, lucky that I had such a fantastic managing director. I then went on to be promoted to marketing director. I negotiated a pay rise during that. I got my full bonus and scored top marks in my review. And I don't tell you that because I'm sort of boasting about how brilliant I am at marketing. This is to show that despite going through 3 miscarriages and intensive IVF treatment, I was still able to prioritize my career and do a really, really good job at work because I had the right support. And that's what we're here to talk about today, about how you as employers can support your employees to get through this challenging time, to plan their families, and to do a great job at work. Golnoush, you've had a slightly different fertility experience so far. Would you mind sharing what you've been through?
Absolutely. I think I'd sometimes call it my reproductive journey rather than my fertility. I think a lot of for a lot of women especially, things start a lot earlier than the trying to get pregnant part starts. I struggled with very, very bad periods from I was 12, which led on to a time at university when I was employed by the university to be doing teaching while doing my PhD, and I was suffering from various sorts of symptoms of endometriosis, recurrent infections, and so on. And I was put in a position where I didn't feel like I can communicate my concerns or my pain with my group or with HR. And, looking back at it now, I don't think I would say that this was the university's fault at all. I think I was never told or given permission to share those concerns. And I think not having a safe space or not feeling safe enough to express that you're struggling or that something from a health perspective is impacting your performance then goes on to create so much anxiety. As a woman undergoing reproductive complications, which then are affecting my fertility at the same time, I felt like I was out of control. I wasn't in control of my body. And surely that's the one thing that I should be in control of. And I think that position is a position that is very difficult to deal with. It drove me to the point where I wanted to quit my PhD. I didn't think, I always think, how am I going to be able to do well? How am I going to be part of a workplace and turn up to meetings or perform if my health or my reproductive health is going to get in the way of that?
I see this so much with my coaching clients that they're saying, I'm going to have to quit.
Yeah,
I'm going to take a demotion. I'm going to try and sit back from my career somehow. And these are amazing, talented women who have always been on this amazing kind of career trajectory.
It's terrifying, actually, because the future doesn't look bright. And it's you have to push through that. And I admire that you managed to go through an IVF cycle through your whole fertility journey, miscarriages, everything involved, and managed to still keep going. Because I think a lot of women don't, and it's also okay not to.
Absolutely. I want to be clear that was the right path for me, but that's certainly not what I would advocate.
But for workplaces to acknowledge that and to create a safe space so that you can actually express your concerns. Now, I was never in a position where I was trying to have a baby, but I was aware that my fertility is declining. And I had access to information and education to be proactive and do something about it. I'm aware that not many do. And so even though I was working in the women's health field, I had prepared myself for everything when I decided to undergo an IVF cycle and freeze. That cycle still hit me so hard. Yeah. It came out of nowhere. I knew that the hormones are going to impact me. I didn't realize to what extent. I didn't feel like myself for a good month and a half while undergoing the actual treatments. The pending feeling of, doom is like if at a university when you sit exams, that feeling of going into an exam, I had that feeling at every single scan, every time you inject yourself. The idea of, I hope this works. I hope I'm doing it right. And that really does impact your physical, mental health in every way. And if you don't feel safe at work, I was lucky. I was running a women's health company. Everyone around me knew, and they would be able to support me. I had to take time off. And at every point I was thinking, what if I was in a position where I couldn't take the time off? What if I was in a position where my boss or anyone around me didn't understand what I'm going through? What would I do then? And that's really stuck with me. I think it's so important for us to be proactive.
It's interesting that we both used the word luck. We were lucky that we had
absolutely
supportive employers, whether it's your company or the one I was working for.
And I think that phrase luck is borne out by the statistics. There's loads of research and that most women simply don't tell their employers. About 64% of women simply don't tell their employers what they're going through because they don't have that safe space to do so. I know that is actually the most crucial thing an employer can do in the workplace is set up, as you mentioned, the policies. Have a policy, have something in writing, have somewhere that somebody can go to just to talk through what can be done, what can be achieved, what is the right path. Is it to step back, which may be the right thing? Is it to take some time off? Or is it to use work as a distraction and push through whilst being aware that there's a parallel path going on in the personal life?
Absolutely. I think it's really, really personal. What I needed and what I asked for was the big, exciting projects. I wanted to be completely distracted. I also needed to have control over my diary. So if I wasn't there, no questions asked. And then I also needed to sort of be trusted to do my job. But if I was going to fall, I was going to give them some warning and they would catch me.
And that's really important, that company culture of flexibility, being able to control your diary, not being micromanaged, being able to have that freedom to come in a bit later or go at lunchtime for an extended appointment because you've got to go and have a hormone test or a screen. That sort of flexibility in work pattern really needs to be embedded in a number of companies' cultures in order to facilitate that sort of journey.
Yeah. Joy, you speak to companies every day who want to better support their employees, who are facing challenges. What do they say the challenges are that they're facing, and what do you advise them?
I think that's a really interesting question. There are so many different challenges that companies face. I think the whole health and well-being remit feels so huge. HR managers feel that they need to be experts in so many areas. And I think the first thing is about education. Simply having a bit of awareness of an issue, being able to signpost people to information, whether that's a knowledge bank of charities or partnerships. So working with companies that can provide specialist services, providing access to those services. And I think companies really want to understand what are the barriers. Employees, if they're taking time off as sick leave, it's not really sick leave, it's time off for appointments that it's health and well-being related. Let's manage that. Let's understand why an employee needs a particular time off and have that compassionate environment. And I think companies being able to roll that out and have that culture from the top down is what I'm hearing a lot of in terms of all sorts of health and well-being. But fertility is particularly hard to talk about. In many cultures, it can be quite a taboo subject, and certainly with different employee bases, can be really hard to reach out and talk to different groups of employees about that. So I'd say that it's really an interesting area that companies are looking at.
Absolutely. I think I can imagine that employers are sort of nervous about doing the right thing or saying the wrong thing. But there is so much education out there of how to manage the situation best, what to say and what not to say.
There are resources. The CIPD has some policy guidelines. They've got a really helpful article that's available that could be a good starting point. The Fawcett Society has done a huge amount of research and has a paper out. Again, HR managers can start by reading that. Companies can start disseminating that information. They could look at running workshops. I think it's that first step that is the most frightening with any of these sorts of issues. And there's lots of talk about including treatment and expense, and there's talk of finance, but actually that personal touch of having a manager you can confide in is often the first step.
Absolutely. It's that psychological safety, isn't it? And actually I should mention that the IVF Network have a free HR policy, fertility policy template, which you can download from their website as well. So do go and get hold of that if you're ready to take that step.
I think something to point out here is, for companies, it's also it's a scary field also. I mean, a company needs to be successful and they want to improve their outcomes and so on. And fertility is a field that shouldn't be, but unfortunately it's a new field to this space. And so it might be a scary field, and some employers might feel wrongly so, by the way, that, well, if I have a fertility policy in place, if I encourage this, then that's going to be a headache, because I might attract people who are going to have to then be problematic for me. And this is, playing devil's advocate here. And I've heard this a few times, unfortunately, where I've actually heard employers say, but this is going to impact our outcomes, this is going to impact our workflows, this is going to be headaches for us. I think something to point out often to employers is actually the loss that the company will face if they don't acknowledge, fertility is a part of health. If they don't acknowledge their employees' reproductive journeys, is going to, be far greater than the struggles of taking this step and creating a space that is reproductively friendly and supportive. I think it's, which outweighs the other, and pointing out to employers that the weight of not acknowledging and not providing a fertility friendly environment is going to be far greater than going ahead, taking on the challenge and creating a fertility safe or friendly environment. You will actually end up attracting a more loyal group of employees with happier and higher retention rates and in turn, cost friendly employees as well.
Yeah. Joy, Zest have done some research into that,
Yes.
haven't they? Are you able to talk through some of those
Yes,
details?
I can. So Zest, there's an do you?
I do.
do
Sorry.
have the
Yeah,
sheet?
you'd have those on there.
Sorry,
I thought you had it in front of you.
It's
It's the other side.
It's on the other side. So Zest studied 2,000 adults and found that 2% of employees said if they could create their own benefits package, they would include a fertility benefit in the top 5. So that's a really small number, but it's quite a significant number because it rises to 3% for women and then 4% for those aged 18 to 34. And bearing in mind this is a key workforce demographic that we're looking to attract. We've got an ageing demographic generally, so this workforce is particularly targeted now. These are the skills and expertise that we need in all businesses across all businesses. And in a study of 500 HR decision makers, Zest found that 17% of businesses said that they offer fertility benefits to their employees. So 17%, that's 1 in 5 or just under. So that's quite a low proportion of employers that are actually offering any sort of fertility support. But there is a driver to increase that. 15% of businesses are looking at this because they've had employees request it. And the most powerful statistic, I think, is that 86% of businesses believe that if they offer benefits to support employees, they should offer it across all stages of life. So not just fertility, but that goes back to the full reproductive journey, whether that's younger or older women going through menopause, younger women understanding how their bodies work and period issues before they start their fertility journey, but opening that up across the whole health and wellbeing range. And there are other areas too. It's not just a women's health issue.
Absolutely. I think often we are guilty when we think of fertility challenges and treatment as being something that a couple face.
Yeah.
And certainly I work with a few women who are going through this alone, that they're either choosing or not by choice going through it alone. They would prefer to have a partner. And that requires some extra support.
Yes.
There are also marginalised minority groups, such as the LGBT plus community, who need some extra support. They've already faced huge barriers of getting to this point. Are you hearing about that from companies that you're speaking to, that they want to learn how to support those groups?
Yes, I think the diversity, equality and inclusion agenda is higher on every HR manager's radar. They're looking to incorporate different groups. You mentioned the LGBT community who may have faced particular barriers, and it's identifying who may be affected. But also culturally, there are a number of Black, Asian, minority groups where this is a real taboo. There's an extra barrier, there's a psychological barrier. And a lot of the research, so the research from the Fawcett Society shows that low income families are particularly affected. So there's also a wealth demographic. There's a need to address the equality that those on lower incomes don't have access to necessarily the time off in the same way that higher paid employees do, and they don't have the resources. So they're reliant much more on the NHS. And this is where employers can play a really important part in addressing the different demographics and targeting communications to suit their workforce and their diverse workforce, and bringing everybody on that journey and including everybody.
And it can be, an extra stress or an extra trauma. I'm doing some training at the moment with LGBT mummies, and I was talking last night to them about how members of the LGBT plus community have to sort of come out again.
Yes.
Whether that's, at medical appointments or to their employers, and why should they ever have to do that, and the stress and trauma that can cause on top of a fertility journey.
I think, there are some problems that we've faced in the past in the medical system that we can learn from. And I think one of them is putting people in boxes. So, previously, if you want to, for example, diagnose a person with PCOS, they have to tick 3 out of how many boxes to be able to be diagnosed with such. And this has caused issues. Now, if we take lessons from that kind of behavior and then apply it for the fertility field, is that, we say someone has infertility and so they're struggling and so they need fertility support and care. Whether they've been unsuccessful in getting pregnant, whether they've had recurrent miscarriage, and so on. And so they will approach their workplace, and a good workplace, if they're lucky, and say, I'm struggling with infertility, I'm undergoing fertility treatment, and so I need the support. Now, when it comes to groups like the LGBTQ plus family, you've got women who are undergoing, a couple, 2 ladies who want to get pregnant. Now, when they when they approach their workplace, they cannot say I'm infertile or I am struggling with infertility, because that's not a box that they are placed in, even through the NHS or anywhere
even
else.
if that is part of their journey.
Even if that is part of because you're in a position where you can't be diagnosed with infertility, because you need to be trying for X amount of time to get pregnant to then be called infertile. But you are in a position where actually the only way you are going to become pregnant is through IVF.
Yes.
And so it's just added layers of complication that is present that we need to acknowledge. It creates more anxiety. I want to try for a baby. That involves fertility treatment. Now, will I be qualified for the support? That's anxiety.
Yeah.
And that's a whole level of stress that this group of people will have to acknowledge. And so creating a safe environment, psychological safety, so gender identity is important in the workplace, and having your policies, your fertility benefits actually encompass that gender identity, that safe psychological safety, and encourage talk and community creation, I think, at work is also very important in helping.
Absolutely, to support men, women and people who want to grow their families.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Are you happy to talk a bit about the Muslim community?
Of course, yeah. I think it's really, really important to have these conversations and not shy away from them. Like we said, minority groups, often the taboos are bigger. The Muslim community is one of them, where the reproductive system is a taboo in itself. We don't like talking about it, as a lot of communities don't. And then fertility is an added layer to that, where in a lot of cultures and a lot of circles, expressing that you are struggling, becoming pregnant is like a big red flag, something that you're going to stamp on your forehead and you have to walk around with that. And people don't want to do that. People don't want to talk about the fact that they're struggling to conceive. It's a shame in a way. And this is very common in a lot of Muslim communities. And it's something that we need to tackle, because it means that these women then don't actually seek, or men, male infertility is a huge thing that's even more of a taboo than the women's side in some circles. And so these people don't seek the help that's even available. So companies need to be aware that it's not just about having that written policy or having that help available. It's actually making it accessible to employees who may not be looking for it, or who may actually find it very, very scary to tap into.
And I think you make a really important point there. breaking down the taboos, having the information available, whether people are looking for it or not, part of that will automatically start the thought process, even if it doesn't start the conversation. It enables that safe space.
Absolutely.
And it enables people to look for information should they need to as well. Somebody else can point them in the right direction because it's there.
Safe source of information, right? Because we don't want to, I think as workplaces, or even as someone who advocates for women's health, I sometimes think I'm not there to change your culture or set new values, or that's really important to be like, we're not attacking your your social structure, your value structure, or anything like that. We're there to help. And so how can we help you rather than please take the help that I want to enforce on you? But it's how can I design policies or help that will help you on your journey, which is unique to someone else's.
Yeah. And the thing I always advise is to listen. To listen to what your employee is telling you and what they want, and don't make any assumptions. We were talking beforehand and we came up with these 3 sort of golden rules of being fertility friendly, and I'm going to add another one to it. So the first one I'm going to say is that psychologically safe workplace, making sure your culture is right for having these conversations. And then it's about having a policy. So anyone can understand what rights and what benefits they are entitled to by working for your company. And then the third one being education. So educating employers, but also educating your employees on where to find the right information. And then the fourth one being access. So access to those third-party groups who can provide the right support and information to you. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that, Joy?
I think it's really important to provide access. And I think this is one of the big areas that we can see growth in the employee benefits market. Lots of providers are coming up to fill the void that's being left by the NHS. And it doesn't have to be costly. So lots of employers are really scared about the cost. If they say they're going to support somebody through fertility treatment, there's an immediate, oh my goodness, there's pound signs. One cycle of IVF is what, £5,000?
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky, yes. Again,
don't know where that is.
Yeah. So there's a huge cost implication, and employers are rightly worried that it could cost. But providing access and information doesn't have to be costly. Providing a link, providing information, having an employee benefits platform that can, such as Zest, that can send email communications, that can host information pages, that can host the policies, that can link out to third-party specialists who can do the nutritional advice, the testing, the screens that need to happen, or the coaching and mentoring, or the support for mental health. And I think that's really, really invaluable, providing that safe space, that safe contact number you can call to have that advice and talk to somebody that can then point you in the right direction. And that doesn't have to be costly. That just needs to be thought through really well. The policies need to be in place, but the access needs to be there. It needs to be available to all.
What do you think about that, Golnoush?
Yeah, I absolutely. I think, that fourth kind of rule is, I like calling it filling in the gaps.
Yeah.
And the health gaps. I mean, in this case, it's the health gaps or any other gap, but it's filling in the gaps. And I think workplaces can fill in those gaps, build bridges where they are none, and give employees access to education so that they can be making informed decisions on their fertility journeys. It's so important to empower people to make informed decisions. We throw people into these cycles without telling them how they can help themselves, how they can improve their outcomes, and then forcing their hands in making decisions without that education. That's just not fair. It's not just fair, it's costly. It's costly for the healthcare system, it's costly for the workplaces as well. So for a couple to undergo multiple IVF cycles has more cost for everyone in society. So if workplaces come in and put these things in place where they either we provide blogs and educational pieces to workplaces. Just make those available in terms of education. Provide the education, provide access to the coaches, the sources of support and information. The workplace, yes, it's costly to provide that support directly, but there are people out there like yourself who provide that support. And so just connecting your employees to people like yourself, or to people at ScreenMe, where we provide the screening that, for example, the NHS or a lot of fertility clinics don't provide because of its costs. That will create an ecosystem that will be thriving, rather than just, having expenses emotionally, economically, physically for both the employees, the employers, and the wider society as a whole.
Something that's been a little bit controversial recently, I've read a few articles on, is fertility benefits being a perk, and whether that sort of enables or encloses an employee. What do you think about that, Joy?
So I think anybody undertaking a fertility journey would value help, support, empathy from their employer. It's about compassion. And I think calling it a workplace perk is really underselling the whole thing. It kind of cheapens the offering. I think it is hugely enabling to anybody to have that freedom to talk to their line manager, to have time off for appointments, and to go through the journey that they need that have that personal support. The word in closing, I think, is primarily related to the idea that you're freezing eggs so you can delay having a child, therefore you can concentrate on your career. And I think that just dismisses so many different employees and their journeys. Golnoush's journey, where she's freezing eggs because of an underlying condition, just highlights that it's not about the career, it's about a personal choice. So I would say that the benefits that are available to employees through an employee benefits platform, through a thought through employee benefits program, shouldn't be seen as perks. I think that's the wrong word to use, but they are definitely a benefit to an employee, and they are invaluable to that person at that particular point in time when they really need that support.
Absolutely.
Just want to add something there. I think it's good to look at how we've approached anything that's new in the past. Things that have previously been thought of as being a privilege or a perk have later come to be, a necessity. And I think this is one of them. I think they've been referred to as perks because it's a new concept. Fertility is not something that has historically been spoken about. And so I think because of it being new, it's being kind of referred to as this a perk, or whereas I think what we're working towards is acknowledging that your fertility journey is just like any other health journey in any other field.
Absolutely.
And so it is a necessity, and not a privilege or a perk.
No.
And I think we are moving towards a time where all workplaces and all different fractions of society are going to be acknowledging fertility as a journey that people go through. And again, I think expanding it, because workplaces don't like, when you talk to them about fertility, they think, okay, well, what percentage of my workforce is this going to actually impact? And does that make financial and economical sense for me? I think changing the language we speak with might help when talking to employers, simply because they're not educated enough to understand, is the fact that when we're speaking about fertility, we're not speaking about your current employees who are undergoing fertility treatment. Anyone between the age of 18 and, God knows, at the moment, up to 50, anyone being employed may not even be thinking about fertility now, but once they consider their different options, where shall I work? Shall I work at this company who's given me an offer, or that company who's given me an offer? Even if I'm not trying to have a baby now, I'm going to look at what is on the table. What do they offer me? Maybe in 10 years, I will want to have a child. Maybe I won't want to have a child, but I like to feel like I am in a safe place where I will have the means to get the information I need, and I will feel safe enough to express my needs. I think that makes all the difference for employers in terms of who you attract and how much you retain. And I think when speaking to employers, it's really important to consider those things and then put it in the right vocabulary.
Yeah, that was a really perfect way of putting it. Thank you. I'm going to go to some questions now from the people watching. So thank you for submitting these questions. So the first one, we went through 4 rounds of IVF. There are definitive areas, emotional, financial, and unfortunately for us, grief. As a male, how do you suggest an employer can support while maintaining total confidentiality?
Oh, I think that is a wonderful question. Thank you so much for submitting that. And I think it really flags the challenges that men in particular face. They're often seen as an adjunct to the woman who is going through quite often the screens, the IVF cycle, the emotions, and there's a lot of focus on the woman's needs. And I think the male role in supporting and being aware and having that information and having that open space to talk to the employer. I talk to a lot of employers who are very concerned about men's mental health, and I think that is a huge factor that needs to be considered. Men need to be informed about this. They need to go for the screens if applicable. They need to be able to support their partner, and they need to have that safe space to talk to their employer about that and have the time off. Grief, unfortunately, I think 1 in 4 IVF cycles is unsuccessful. I don't know if that is actually higher, but there's 1 in 3. The estimate is 1 in 3 pregnancies will end in will not be successful as well. So there's a huge amount of grief there, and I think it's really important to acknowledge the role of partners who may be men, who may not be, going through this process and having that time and space. And the policies must be inclusive. They must allow for the time off for men and the space for men as well.
Absolutely.
I think something that was mentioned in the question, and I respect it a lot, is confidentiality. I think it's really, really important to acknowledge that. Now, fertility as a field is something that is only recently being spoken about. Now, men's role in fertility is even more new. And so I think when we talk about education, policies, community creation, creating a safe space, then I think there needs to be a little even more of an emphasis on this is inclusive. This is not a gender-based thing.
Absolutely.
It's not just for women who are going through infertility. It's not just for men who are going through infertility. It's for couples, people, individuals who are struggling in this journey, whether it is from their side, their partner's side, or neither. And I think in those policies, implementing the confidentiality part and creating these systems or processes so that they do accommodate for the fact that some people would want this to be confidential. And having I think asking for a person at work. You don't need to have an entire team knowing what you're going through, but having that one person that you can speak to and who can help you, speak to higher up, speak to HR, a buddy system in a way, someone who can actually go through that journey at work with you can be very helpful in achieving what you want, but asking someone. I think
that permission is key.
Permission is key. And I think, it need to kind of have that courage to go and confine in one person and pave that way, because I don't think that way actually exists in workplaces yet.
Agreed. So the next question is, are there any articles or publications you would recommend regarding fertility and your employer?
Yes. Good question.
Good question.
And you can think of, you were just talking about the CIPD, weren't you?
There are 2. The CIPD has some good resources on implementing policy, and the other one I mentioned was the Fawcett Society. They have some good resources. They've got a paper which explains with a very high level snapshot some of the information, and I think also talk to advisors. They're a specialist. You're one of them. So yes, absolutely. We can put some links in the chat.
Yeah, and the IVF Network do some good work on this as well. So yeah, we'll put those in the notes. Okay, next question. Do you think companies should be encouraging testing more as part of fertility support? I guess that's reproduction support as well, Golnoush.
Yeah. Now, I think the problem here is encouraging. I don't think it's a company's job to be encouraging their employees to take certain actions. I think employers should make things accessible. People often know their needs. As in, the least they know is their problem. As in, there is always a pain point or a problem. Now, they will have that pain point or a problem, and they will be looking for solutions. Sometimes the solutions involve testing. When we talk about fertility, there is a lot of things going on there. Now, especially unexplained infertility, recurring miscarriage, all of that. There's so many different factors. There will be a lot of cost in terms of extra testing and so on. And I think what people undergoing their fertility journey or reproductive journeys, whether that be their fertility, whether it be recurring, infections and issues that some people struggle with, or menopause, later in life, anything that people are going through, I think it's important to make it accessible for your employees to get the help, testing, support that they need. So I think the word here that's not right is the encourage. I think it's make it accessible. Sometimes if a company is big enough or has the means, make it more affordable. It also helps. But at the first stage, make it accessible.
So it's the education and access.
It's the education
again,
and access.
4 golden rules.
But then if you're big enough to be able to do that, make it affordable, because I don't think anyone expects companies to pay out for something completely. But, that little bit of help does make a huge difference in a fertility journey and the level of support that people feel.
Did you have anything to add to that, or did Golnoush cover it off?
I was going to say that was a perfect answer in terms of the financial support as well. A little bit of financial support will go a long way.
It does.
So the final question, how would employers start their research into offering fertility benefits? I mean, I'm going to say if you're here asking that question, then you've started your journey. And we love you. So thank you for doing that. I think there are so many ways in which you can do it. As I said, the IVF Network offer the free template for a fertility policy. How else?
I think you can talk to your benefits providers, your advisors. There are a huge number of companies that would be willing to talk to you. Here at Zest, we'd be happy to link in with any of our clients, with any of the providers that we have contacts with, such as the IVF Network or ScreenMe. So if again, as Jen said, if you're here, you've started your journey.
I think something to add there is, for companies, you want to be efficient. You don't want to be running around reading too many articles, trying to figure out how to untangle this knot or that. If you have the means to do things the faster way, and get an advisor who has been working in that field, who knows exactly what they're doing, who knows the steps, and just crack on with it. An advisor who can come in, who can assess your company, your needs, and then present a plan of action that you can then go and implement. That's the easiest route to action, I would say.
I think the only thing I would add is around listening to your employees, and what do they want, what do they need, what challenges are they facing, and just don't assume anything, because you talk to one employer and you've only talked to one employee. That's it. Okay, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been such a good discussion. I hope you've all got lots out of this. We'll put lots of resources in the notes and share that round. And thank you so much.